In this module, we'll be reviewing some basic tree biology. We'll also go over some of the challenges trees face in the urban environment. And finally, we'll highlight ways that young urban trees can be supported. So let's dive into tree biology. Two important concepts to grasp when it comes to tree care is the composition of the woody parts of the tree, the trunk and branches, and understanding how trees recover from wounds. In this slide, we want to bring your attention to the phloem and xylem. These are the pathways for nutrient and water transport. As you can see in the diagram, the phloem is located on the back side of the bark. Next to the phloem is the cambium, and on the back side of the cambium is the xylem. When the bark is damaged by a lawnmower ramming into the trunk, so is the tree's ability to move nutrients and water from the roots to the other parts of the tree, and vice versa. Next, we want you to understand that trees don't heal, they seal. Trees seal off their wounds by killing off cells around the wound, much like a submarine lowers its watertight doors, keeping water in one section and keeping it from spreading to other areas of the submarine. This is how you can imagine trees sealing off their wounds. Therefore, when the tree is damaged or pruned, the tree has to put some of its limited energy into sealing off those wounds. Now let's look at leaves and needles. Basically, we want you to think of the leaves as the tree's solar panels. They transform the sun's energy into sugars, or starch, to provide energy for the tree. Next, we're going to review the importance of roots, the invisible part of the tree, and the part that people tend to think about the least. Roots provide a number of essential functions, such as anchoring, storing energy, water and nutrient transport throughout the tree, and absorbing water and nutrients from the soil. As you can see in this image, roots come in a variety of sizes and densities. First, we have absorbing roots. These are fine, non-woody root hairs which absorb water and the 14 essential elements from the soil. Next, we have transport and support roots. These larger roots store sugars when the tree is dormant and transfer nutrients and water from the absorbing roots to the rest of the tree. And finally, these larger roots help to anchor and stabilize the tree. Last, we have the taproot. This is the first root to develop when the tree is a seedling. It also provides some anchoring and stability. However, there are a few tree species that hold on to their taproot, while many others eventually get rid of it. Now let's talk about the challenges that trees face in the urban environment. One thing that living in the city does not offer is nutrient-rich, uncompacted soil, at least as far as trees are concerned. Most soil in our built environment is compacted, which means that it can be oxygen poor and may not effectively hold moisture. Soil compaction can be a result of construction equipment, pedestrians, and cars. Nutrient-poor soil is a common characteristic of urban soil. Because the urban environment is a built environment, soil is moved around and loses essential nutrients over time. And around much of the city, nutrients are not replaced through decomposing organic matter such as leaves and mulch. Another factor that poses challenges for trees are extreme temperatures. In the Pacific Northwest, it's mostly extreme heat events that occur in the summer. The last factor I'd like to cover that negatively impacts trees in our city is bark damage. Lawn mowers bumping into trunks, string trimmers whipping across bark, and car doors bashing against trunks cause harm to the tree, and as I mentioned earlier, disrupts the water and nutrient flow. We'll get into this a little more later. Now that we've talked about how trees can be harmed, I'd like to tell you about how folks can support young trees. Water. Water is the most important step a person can take to help their young tree grow and thrive. A tree needs water to drink their nutrients. A lack of water is one of the leading causes of young tree failure. So by encouraging the tree parents to water, you're helping to keep these trees alive and healthy. Living in the Pacific Northwest, or more specifically the Willamette Valley, means that we typically get most of our rain during the winter and early spring months. As you know, it doesn't rain much, if at all, later in the spring, through summer, and into fall. This means that nature is not watering the young trees when they need it most, when they're awake and growing. It's good for you as a summer inspector to know our watering recommendations so you can share these tips with tree parents if needed. Trees in the Pacific Northwest need to be watered during the dry months, which in general ranges from mid-April to late October. Trees should be supported with watering during their first 3 growing seasons. It's best practice to water trees infrequently, which translates to once per week or twice per week during longer heat waves. In addition to infrequent watering, it's best to water trees slowly and deeply. This means using methods that allow for trickling water, which will allow water to reach deeper into the soil, encouraging roots to grow a little deeper. Finally, avoid watering next to the trunk for the next 3 years. If you place your bucket or hose over the root zone between the trunk and the edge of its leafy canopy known as the drip line, you will encourage roots to begin growing outwards. By the 2nd and 3rd years, the drip line will have extended beyond the previous year's drip line. You can let tree parents know about 3 different tools for watering. All of these allow for water to trickle into the soil. A 15 to 20 gallon watering bag, which can be purchased at nursery stores or box stores, can be filled once a week or twice during heat waves. A 5-gallon bucket is a nice economical way to go if folks already have one. 3 small holes can be drilled about a 1/2 inch apart at the base of the bucket wall. The bucket can then be filled 3 times through the course of the day. Each time the bucket is filled, it can be moved to a different part of the root zone. Finally, folks can place a trickling hose in the root zone for 15 to 30 minutes once a week. Mulch is organic matter placed over the root zone and is a critical line of support for urban trees. Mulch has a lot of benefits and is an essential component in supporting a young tree. Mulch retains soil moisture longer, regulates soil temperature in winter and summer. It slowly replenishes the nutrients in the soil as it breaks down, and it keeps competing weeds and grass at bay. And without the weeds and grass growing in the root zone, this automatically keeps lawn equipment away from the base of the tree. Here are some basic principles to mulching a tree. The 3-3-3 rule. This means that the mulch over the root zone should be 3 inches deep and the ring should be 3 feet in diameter as space permits. Narrow planting strips may prohibit a 3-foot wide ring. Also, in the following years, the mulch ring can be expanded to the edge of the expanding drip line. The third 3 means that the inner edge of the mulch ring should be 3 inches away from the trunk. The mulch ring should look like a donut. Yum! You may be wondering, what can be used as mulch? Leaves, grass clippings, and even straw all provide organic matter, but they tend to dry out more quickly. Wood chips, wood bark, and compost are all good materials, but basically, any organic matter is sufficient for mulch, but woody mulch will last longer and will provide more of the benefits. Let's review improper versus proper mulching. Here, we have a tree that is dressed with a mulch volcano. This means there's mulch piled up against the trunk that can lead to rot and disease. Whereas here, we have a mulch donut. This mulch pattern follows the 3-3-3 rule, and the mulch covers the entire root zone. The final piece of the tree care puzzle involves proper pruning. Typically, the only time one should prune a young tree is to remove dead and broken branches and suckers or sprouts. All additional pruning should wait until the tree is established, at least 3 years after planting. Using proper pruning techniques is an important detail to appreciate. There is a lot you can learn about proper tree pruning and far too much to cover in this training. One important point is that branch removals should be pruned off just outside of the branch collar. The branch collar is where the tree hormones are stored that help the tree seal off wounds. Under no circumstances should branches be broken off of the tree, even dead ones, as this can rip the bark, causing more damage. If you have a conversation with a tree parent, please direct them to the tree care and pruning resources listed at the bottom of the door hanger. If you want to learn more about pruning, consider signing up for our pruning training later this year. If a tree parent asks you when it's a good time to hedge or shear their tree, or if they mention their plan to cut off the top of their tree to control its height, please let them know that this will harm the tree and will likely shorten its life. Topping or shearing leaves wounds that are susceptible to rotting, pests, and disease, and it causes stress responses. Please encourage them to visit the resources at the bottom of the door hanger. And now it's time for a little review. What are the 3 challenges that urban trees face? A. Compacted soil. B. Nutrient-poor soil. C. Trees' seeds stolen by squirrels. Or D. Bark damage. If you chose A, B, and D, you're right! How often should a tree be watered during the first 3 growing seasons? A. Every day. B. Once a week, twice during really hot weeks. C. Once a month. Or D. A tree doesn't need to be watered because it receives rain throughout the winter. If you chose B, once a week, twice during really hot weeks, you're right again. Now, select the properly mulched tree. In A, we have a mulch donut, B, a mulch volcano, and C, rocks over the root zone. If you chose A, you're right. Mulch following the 3-3-3 rule. You're on fire!